Some mysteries aren't buried in the past or hidden across the galaxy. They happen right here, on our own planet, again and again, often measured, sometimes filmed. And science still can't fully explain them. A ball of light that drifts through storms, perfect circles that appear in the desert, a wave of cloud 1,000 kilometers long, a sky that glows before the ground shakes, and a storm that almost never stops. These aren't stories. People have watched them, recorded them, studied them, and we still don't fully understand how they happen. In this video, we're looking at 5 natural phenomena that science still can't fully explain. Not the supernatural. The evidence never goes there. Just the real world, behaving in ways we can't quite account for. We'll start with something that has frightened people for centuries, and that physics still can't reliably reproduce. It's a stormy night. Rain, thunder, and then, without warning, a glowing ball of light appears in the air. It might drift through a window, float across a room, and vanish with a soft pop or a bang. People have described it for centuries. Sailors at sea, villagers, pilots. It's called ball lightning. For a long time, scientists doubted it was even real, but there are now far too many consistent accounts, and in 2012, Chinese researchers accidentally caught one on their instruments, recording its light. That spectrum showed elements from the soil, silicon, iron, calcium. That points to one leading idea. When lightning strikes the ground, it vaporizes minerals into a glowing ball that burns for a few seconds. But it's not settled. Other researchers argue for plasma trapped in a vortex, or microwaves sealed inside a bubble of air. And no one has been able to reliably create ball lightning in a lab and match everything witnesses describe. We have thousands of reports and a handful of measurements. We still can't fully explain what it is. The next mystery doesn't move at all. It just appears in the ground. Across the grasslands of Namibia, the ground is marked with something strange. Millions of bare, almost perfectly round circles. From the air, they form an eerily regular pattern, spaced out like a honeycomb across the desert. They're called fairy circles, and they're alive in a sense. They appear, grow, and vanish over decades. The question is, what makes them? For years, 2 camps have argued. One says termites, colonies clearing the roots beneath each circle. The other says the plants do it themselves. In a desert this dry, grasses may organize into patterns, each ring pulling water away from the bare center, keeping it empty. Recent studies lean toward that second idea. When researchers dug up the grasses, the roots weren't eaten. The plants were dying of thirst. The soil inside the circles is drier, and seedlings there quickly wither. A 2025 review called Self-Organization the best fit. But it still isn't fully closed, and the same patterns turn up in Australia, where the conditions aren't the same. The next mystery is impossible to miss. It fills the entire sky. At dawn, over a remote stretch of northern Australia, the sky does something almost unreal. A single, smooth tube of cloud, sometimes 1,000 kilometers long, comes rolling across the horizon, low and fast, like a wave breaking in slow motion. Sometimes there are several, marching in ranks. It's called the morning glory cloud, and pilots travel from around the world to glide along its face. We have a rough idea how it forms. Sea breezes colliding over the Gulf, a sudden temperature inversion, a rolling wave in the air lifting moist air into cloud. but the full recipe still escapes us. Despite decades of study, no one can reliably predict exactly when a morning glory will appear, and the same conditions elsewhere almost never produce anything like it. We can see it, film it, even fly it. We still can't say precisely why it forms here, like this. The next mystery is one you might not want to see, because of what usually follows. Moments before the ground shakes, witnesses sometimes report the same eerie thing. The sky begins to glow. Flashes on the horizon, shimmering sheets of light, pale orbs hovering over the ground. They're called earthquake lights, and for a long time scientists dismissed them as imagination. Then the cameras arrived. Security footage and phones have now captured strange flashes in the sky around major quakes, enough that the phenomenon is taken seriously. The leading explanation comes from geophysicist Friedemann Freund, that when certain rocks are put under enormous stress, they release electric charge, which flows to the surface and ionizes the air into a glow. But there's no consensus. Others point to piezoelectric effects in quartz, or to the air itself being charged as seismic waves ripple through it. Some even question whether all these lights are the same thing. We now have the footage. We still can't fully explain what lights the sky before the Earth moves. The last mystery is the most relentless of all. Over a lake in Venezuela, where the Catatumbo River meets Lake Maracaibo, the sky almost never rests. For up to 160 nights a year, from dusk until dawn, lightning flashes again and again, as often as 28 times a minute. It is the most concentrated lightning on Earth. We understand the ingredients. The lake sits in a bowl ringed by mountains. Warm, wet air rises off the water. Cool winds pour down from the peaks, and they collide, building towering storms night after night. But that's the puzzle. Those ingredients exist in other places too. Nowhere else on Earth produces a storm this relentless, this precisely in the same spot. And then there's what happened in 2010. The lightning simply stopped. For months, the sky went dark and quiet, and no one is entirely sure why. Then, just as mysteriously, it came back. Sailors once used it to navigate, a lighthouse made of lightning. And we still can't fully explain why it burns here, almost without end. 5 natural phenomena, 1 planet. A ball of light no one can reproduce, circles the desert draws by itself. A cloud that rolls for 1,000 kilometers, a sky that glows before it shakes, and a storm that refuses to end. What they share is simple. They're not hidden away in space or deep in the past. They happen here, in the open, and we still don't fully understand them. The mystery isn't somewhere far away. Sometimes, it's right outside the window. If you want to keep exploring the unknown, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.